Canyon Lake High School art students. My name is Nell Anderson. I'll be your instructor on how to make a color wheel using acrylics. Did you know that acrylics were actually invented in 1940? So they actually didn't even come into production for commercial use until around 1950. And they didn't even become popular until the famous artist Andy Warhol, who did the soup can art. He is known as a pop artist. And when he started using acrylics, they became really popular. People were asking, like, what medium is that? The company that started it was based off of Germany, and they were doing a combo of oil paint and watercolor. And by mixing kind of different properties of each, basically mineral spirit based, they came up with acrylics. And it wasn't very well done at first. They kind of either faded or they dried too quickly, and they couldn't find a way to cheaply have them made. So it wasn't until around 1934 that they started to get the formula right. And then at 1940, they were happy with the product that they had gotten. And then they started to release it to the market around 1950. So acrylics are fairly new compared to the world of art mediums. Charcoal goes back 30,000 years for cave art, and in the caves in France there's like figures of humans hunting and animals running, and they would use pigments and animal fat to combine to make colors, and that's actually the beginning formula for oil paint. Later on, artists would actually even start to use like very precious stones like rubies and sapphires, and they would grind them up into a fine powder and either mix an oil or even a tempera base, which is egg based. So if you ever notice that a teacher has a bottle of red tempera paint and you open it and it smells really bad, that is actually because it's egg based. Same thing with whites and reds. For some reason with tempera they end up smelling horrible really quick. So they do spoil, and they will get a very strong, distinct odor to them. With my oil paints, I like to mix clove oil to kind of help dilute them down a little bit. For acrylics, you need to make sure that you have a cup of water and 2 paintbrushes that are synthetic. You do not want to use natural hair brushes for acrylic. It can ruin them, and plus they're a little too soppy, and so you can ruin them. Now, horsehair is one that's a little bit more versatile that you can use. They don't harm the animal, they just, give the little pony a trim, and they use those trim pieces to make the brushes. I do like horsehair brushes when it's for hair texture. You get this really nice kind of streaky. But if you want a really soft skin tone blending with acrylics, you definitely want to use a synthetic brush that has very firm bristles that are either flat or curved. It depends on the effect that you want, so that you're able to contour to a person's face when you're painting it. Now if you're doing an animal and you want some rough hair texture, then you can switch to a horsehair brush, and then you're able to flick and create that fluffy animal kind of texture. Alright, let's get started on our color wheels. Alright guys, so when working with wet medium, that's including oil, watercolor, acrylics, it's a little bit more prep involved. So for the remote learners, I prefer to use wax paper instead of like a little paint palette. It's a little bit easier to mix with it. You can save your colors really easily or throw them away. It's totally up to you. So with the wax paper, I just pretty much tear off a piece. And this is just a flat of cardboard from a box. And if you feel the wax paper, you'll notice that there's kind of more of a flat side and a shiny side. You want to use the shiny side of the wax paper. You can use any kind of tape. I just have available my blue painter's tape. So I'm going to use that to hold down the wax paper. The white. And the black. The white is going to make your tints. The black is going to make your shades. And to make your tones, you're going to mix these two together to make a gray. Now, you want a neutral gray, a gray that's at like 50%. So I'm going to make my gray right here. I'm going to use mostly white. And I'm going to take the stick end of my paintbrush and dab it on the black and then mix it into here. Now when you're mixing, you don't want to mix outward like this. You want to kind of do an up and down little stab and then try to pull all the stuff around it. My little paint palette looks like the plank from the cartoon. But anyway, so I'm going to come in, take a small amount of black. Black is a very dominant color. You don't need a whole lot of it. And we're going to mix it with the white. And I'm starting by going just up and down, up and down. You want to make sure that you clean off the end, and of course my paper towels are just out of reach. And I have my cup of water, and I have my pencil and some paintbrushes that I'm going to talk to you guys about. So I just wipe that off. Now acrylics being exposed to air, they're going to start drying really quickly. So sometimes I have like just a little spritz bottle. These are like 50 cents to $1 at like H-E-B or Walmart, and they work really well spritzing your acrylics, especially the colors that you're not using right away. When I do my alcohol inks and some other mediums, I have this with rubbing alcohol as well, and I prefer the 90% isotopal. Now this paintbrush, this one is synthetic hair. It feels and kind of looks similar to horsehair, but the synthetic, they just clean a lot better with the acrylics. This one is another synthetic. You can see it's got an orangey color to it. It's still just as soft. This one's a little bit more coarser. And then this is camel hair. If you have this paintbrush, don't really use it for acrylics. This is more like a mop. It is just going to soak up too much paint and you're not going to get very smooth, clean lines. So this guy is only used mostly for watercolors, or if you want to create a wash for your canvas or your paper first, then you use this guy. He's just basically a big old handy mop. So we're not going to use him. We're going to get rid of this guy. We don't want him. Alright, so now you're going to need basically this is a 3H pencil. You don't want a very dark bold pencil when sketching and working with acrylics, because acrylic is a little see-through. So if you press really hard with your pencil, you're going to see your lines. And especially if you're sketching a portrait or a still life, you want to make sure that these are very light. A lot of my students, I even give them watercolor pencils, and they can sketch with those, and then they dissolve in with the medium with the paints when they're applied. So before we get started, we're now that we got our tint, our shade, and our tone. Our tone is like our muscle. He's going to make some really nice colors because he doesn't really lower the intensity as much as the tints, and he doesn't darken the colors as much as the shades. So now we're going to come in with our 3 primary colors. Now my yellow kind of came out a little cottage cheese. These are a little bit older. So I'm just going to do a little spritz right there, and then that's going to kind of help with the mixing. Now I have 2 different reds with me. I'm not sure which red is going to be the best for making my colors, because some reds have already other colors mixed in with them, and if you try to make a purple, it comes out more brown. So we'll see if this is a good red that I want. This is cobalt blue. It's just basically a blue that is chemically made. And primary colors are colors that cannot be mixed to be made. every other color in the spectrum is made off of these three colors. So your greens, your oranges, your purples, all of those are made by mixing these three primary colors. And hopefully your elementary art teacher helped you in knowing which colors to mix and make. And we're going to do that here in the color wheel. So I'm going to put my little blankie over there. Now using a ruler, we're going to make a really simple color wheel, and you guys are going to be like, what? That's a really easy way to do a circle. This paper is 9 by 12. So right here's the 9. Half of 9 is 4.5. So I'm going to put a dot at the 4.5. This is 12 inches with the paper. And knowing that that is my mark, make sure it all lines up. Here's my 6. This is my epicenter of my paper right here. Okay? So from this point right here, we're going to do a 8-inch color wheel. So we're going to mark right here. This is our half point, and we're going to mark at the 8. Alrighty? Then we're going to rotate the ruler, and we're going to do the same thing. Put my 4 on the epicenter. Mark off here, and mark off on my 8. Alrighty? Now if you want to do it again, sideways, never hurts. That was dirty. And might as well do it again this way. Okay. Now all you have to do is connect the dots and you're going to make your circle. Now I'm holding my pencil further back and I'm going to use the natural arc and turn of my wrist to help connect the dots. Some people like to come back with a Sharpie and outline. Of course, acrylic being more thick and plastic base is going to get covered up anyway. So if you want to come back and outline your color wheel, you can do that after you're done making it. Okay, there's my makeshift happy color wheel. I'm going to come in with an eraser, fix that little smudgy noise. Okay, so now we're going to start bisecting this into multiple quadrants. Just like a clock, there's going to be 12 points to the circle. So I like to start off straight up and down, 12 and 6. Alrighty? Now we're going to come in from side to side. I'm still bisecting in my center point. We're going to crop again. Now we're making our little pie shapes. Is that fun? Now we can kind of start counting. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 12, we're good. It's not perfect. Colors, starting off with our primary, then our second, and then our intermediate colors. In the center right here, this is going to be our shade. Okay, you're going to go a little bit more out. This is going to be our tone. And then finally again, this will be our tints. Now, if you're a perfectionist and you wanted to kind of measure off and make your quadrants more even, like that guy's kind of smaller, well that guy's bigger, you can. Honestly, it's about 10 o'clock at night and I'm just doing this tutorial. So with the color wheel, you're going to have your primary colors kind of equally spaced. So you're going to have your reds at a certain point, your blues, and then your yellows, and then everything in between is going to be mixed in there. So I kind of saved a color wheel that I liked. And with this color wheel, you can see how it starts with red, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces is the yellow. So all your colors from the red to the yellow, those are the two that you're going to mix to make all of these red, orange, orange, and yellow, orange. Then with yellow all the way to blue, as you can see you have 1, 2, 3, and then you have your blue. Then this is what's going to be making all your greens, your yellow from here to the blue here. Then finally from your reds to your blues, you're going to be getting your violets. So this is how you kind of make all the colors that you need for it. Then right here we're going to have our tints, our tones, and then our shades. So let's get started. So right here, this is going to be my red. Alright, this is going to be red, orange. This one's going to be plain orange. This big guy is going to be yellow, orange. Finally, our wonderful yellow. Yellow, yellow. Now, because yellow is here and blue is over here, this was yellow, orange. This is now going to be yellow, green, because it's the closest to the yellow, so it's going to have more yellow mixed in there. So from yellow, green, we're now going to have our perfect medium green, mean green. And then here, which is actually one of my more kind of favorite colors, is blue-green. Finally, our primary blue. And so since blue is here, and we're going to be mixing red, we're going to get our violets. Now this is going to be, because it's closer to blue, this is going to be our blue violet. I think I'm just going to write it this way. Oop, look at that, nice handwriting, sideways. This is going to be our plain old violet. And then this is going to be our red violet. This is closest to red. Nice. Okay. So on this one, when we get our red orange actually mixed and perfect and you fill in this space with red orange, you're going to save some of that red orange and you're going to mix a little bit more of the white. So you're going to mix that into here, and then you're going to then take some more of the red orange that was pure, mix a little bit of the gray, and you're going to get the tone, and then you're going to take again the pure red orange and mix a little bit of black, and you're going to get your shade of it. So working your way down. So I'm going to show you how we're going to make these colors. So with red right now, I like to put just a small amount of water first on the paper, and this just allows it to kind of prime and fill in there a little bit better. This is just watercolor paper. You You can do this with copy paper, you just have to be careful about going too much. I'm going to take my red, going back and forth like this, and because I added a small amount of water on there, that red just really soaks in there. It's not as streaky. I'm holding my paintbrush a little bit further back. Now this is a oil-based kind of paintbrush. This is why it's got a longer handle, so you're able to hold it further back while you're painting on a canvas. I just like that it has a very smooth bristles, and it does a nice even application of the paint. So I'm coming in and I'm outlining with the red, and as I'm coming in with this pure red, I'm just touching up where it got a little smutty. And then I also like that it has this flat end so that I can go back and forth and kind of outline areas. Now the golden rule with acrylics is that if it starts to get kind of streaky, like it's not going down as smooth, your friend is going to be water. So if you start to notice, because acrylic is plastic base and it's going to dry really fast. Okay, so there I have my red. Now I'm going to take the stick into my paintbrush. I'm going to take some of the pure red and I'm going to put it right here. And then I'm going to clean off the stick and do a dab of white and then mix it about right here, and now that's how we get pink. Okay, so we just made a tint of red because we added white to it. White is intensity killer. Intensity is basically the property of the color, how pure it is. So this red is very intense. So if you bought a red shirt and you washed it a couple of times, your shirt is going to lower its intensity because the pigment is being washed out of it, okay? So we're gonna take this, a little bit of some water, and we're gonna add that pink in here. I like the wax paper because it keeps everything in place. Some people like paint palettes with those little like circle cubbies, and that's perfectly fine. Whatever you have available. I know that a lot of my remote learners are going to struggle with materials they have readily available, but most people have wax paper in their kitchen. If they don't, you can use like a plastic bag and cut it and wrap it around a piece of cardboard, so that can work too. Okay, look at that nice lovely pink. It's so pretty. Alright, remember we're going to wash our brush in between colors and applications. We're now going to make the tone. It's going to be very toned. Take a little bit of the red, take a bit of the gray, and then mix it. Oh, it's going to be so pretty. Oh, look at that. It's almost purple. This is how you get maroon. Look at the difference. It's amazing. So if you want to make a shadow for a portrait, instead of using black where it's going to look like the person has a black eye, just use a tone for that color. Alright, we're going to take that and put it right here. Look at that difference. Because you're not using pure white, you're not lowering the intensity of the color. You're keeping it more pure. Look how lovely that is. Nice. Happy, happy colors. Love it. Okay, now here comes the tricky part, is the shade. You don't want too much. A little bit of that black is gonna go a long way. So it's barely a dab. Like barely, insignificant little amount, and it's gonna go far. It's gonna be pretty intense. So I'm gonna put a little bit more red on my paintbrush, and I think that's about right. You don't want it black. You still want to be able to see a smidge of that. I'm gonna add a little bit of water because it started to get streaky. And then it just blends a little bit better that way. Nice. Come back, get some more pigment and add that on there. And there you go, creating red with the tint, tone, and shade. Now, of course, you can kind of come back in with a little bit more black, and you can do an ombre. Just show the intensity difference. And if you ever want to do an ombre with a color, the trick is to do it while it's still very wet. I hate the word moist. It's a worse word. There you go. It's a slight ombre. And that looks pretty good. Now, I'm gonna do red orange, and then I'm gonna end this video and let you guys create the rest of your color wheel. Now remember, if you ask me, Ms. Anderson, how do I make green? Just look right here. Which primary color is between green? So you have yellow, and then you have blue. Mixing between yellow and blue, you're going to get your green. You want a good middle green. You don't want a green that's more yellow green or blue green. You want it perfectly in the middle. Yellow is going to be a lot more timid, and you're going to use more yellow than you will blue in making green. So anytime you're having yellow, you want it to be very pure, and you want to start off with that color first. So same thing. Add a little bit of some water to help it spread better. Think of an ice skater, and if she had her skates on and she was walking on some dirt, it's going to be very stopped, and she's not going to be able to slide and glide. When you add water to your paper, it's allowing the pigment to slide and glide to the surface. So very nice yellow. Now to make red orange, I'm going to take the red, and you want to make a little bit more than you need, because remember, you need to pull some of this color to make your tints and your shades and your tones. So starting off with a little bit more red, you can always come back and get more paints. You're going to clean your stick, grab some of that yellow, and mix the two lovelies together. And remember, acrylics will dry darker, so that is still very, very red. You can always come back and get it more paints. And I'm doing the up and down kind of jab, jab, jab. And red is also very dominant, and poor yellow doesn't have a chance. There we go. And when you mix your own colors, instead of just going and grabbing orange, you know, from the bottle, and if you just mix it yourself, it's such more saturated. You get a little bit more of like some kind of color mixing into it. Now this looks like a good orange. So you know what? I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna use this for my perfect middle orange. And that is fine. You don't have to try really hard to get the color. If you just happen to mix it and get a good orange, then oh, by all means, go with it. So I add a little bit of some water. And line it down. And I'm going in like a back and forth kind of quick motion. This is some extra paint. I'm going to move it there. And just blend in that little bit of yellow. And I'm working kind of fast. And my brush strokes, it's a very light, it's like a light kind of feathering that I'm doing. I'm not pressing really hard. It's almost kind of like petting a little puppy or kitten, and you're just doing soft little light pets. Like that. Okay. So now that I got the orange and I have the orange here, I'm gonna scoop some of this and I'm gonna put it right there. I'm gonna take the stick end and I'm gonna mix a little bit of some white. Now make sure that your stick is clean. And we're gonna mix that lovely, and you're gonna get kind of like a sherbet color. Ew. That would be an ice cream flavor I would eat. Yum, 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 yum. Now I already have a little bit of paint on my paintbrush, so I can kind of come in and just apply it on there. Don't forget to dab a little bit of water. And we just lower the intensity of that orange, so it's not that rich orange. Kinda sad. Okay, now you can save this and mix just a little bit of red, and then you would actually have your red-orange tint right here. So keep that, that's a good guy. And then same thing, you can come back and add some more yellow, and then do your yellow-orange tint on that side as well. Okay, wash our brush. We don't want to cross-contaminate. Scoop a little bit of that. Put them right there. And clean off the stick end of my paintbrush. And take my gray. Let's get toned, people. Tone it up. It's almost going to look like a gray, like a greenish kind of color. Okay. So I had just still a little bit of paint on there. We're gonna dip it in the water and apply it right here, and it's almost like a brown. I don't think I would eat an ice cream flavor of that color. I think when my son was little and he ate like way too many carrots, this was the color that ended up in his diaper. Nice. Okay. Clean my paintbrush. Scoop a little bit of the normal orange, clean off my stick, dab, I mean a tiny amount of black. I mean it's barely there. And apply it, wipe it. I might steal just a little bit more. Cool. And then same thing, I'm going to do even just a little bit more black and do an ombre. Okay. Clean my brush, and I think I will smooth this out just a little bit more. It's just amazing how by mixing black, white, or gray, you get a really different effect with your colors. Okay, so now that you've kind of learned how to mix your shade, tints, and tones and all your intermediate and secondary colors using just primary colors. So the rest of this color wheel will probably take a couple of days. To save your palette, remember to spritz it with some water. And just either put it in a gallon Ziploc baggie and express all the air out, or take some plastic wrap and cover it up, and then you can come back and use it. Now, big warner, this paintbrush, if I just left it without washing it, it will be ruined. So, all your remote learners and my students, you need to make sure that you thoroughly wash your paintbrush, alright? Using your cup of water, getting as much paint off as possible. Go to your sink and add Dawn soap or whatever kind of soap that you have at your house, and give your paintbrush a really good kind of shampoo. I mean, you would not take a shower and use shampoo to clean your hair. It's not like you would just go in the shower and put water over your head and then you're done, you step out of the shower. We have to use detergents and soaps to clean our brushes, because guess what? These are also hair and they need to be cleaned as well. This is the ferrule right here. If you mix too much paint, that's why I don't like using the actual bristles to mix, but use the stick end, because you're going to slowly introduce paint all the way up to the metal point right here, and your brushes are going to look like bedhead, like, you know, they just woke up in the morning and, you know, the hair bristles are going to go everywhere. Now, if you accidentally forget to clean your brush, like your phone rings, you're texting, and then 5 minutes later your brush is now hard as a rock. I mean, it is like, you know, take some hand sanitizer, put it in the bottom of a cup, probably pour just enough to soak the bristles. You can even have your cup at an angle and let it soak for a few hours in the hand sanitizer. Then you can pull it out and it actually kind of eats away at the acrylic paint. So that's hand sanitizer for you. It eats up my fingers. I get eczema really bad. So I can only imagine, like, if it's able to, you know, dissolve acrylic paint, what it's actually doing to our hands. So anyway, hand sanitizer is a great way to save your brush. You can then kind of peel off the paint that got stuck on the bristles and then go use soap and water. Sometimes the brush is never the same because it still has some acrylic that's been dried in between the bristles. So just keep that in mind. There's a couple other detergents out there that say there's like an orange fantastic, and there's one called pink sludge. But for some reason, hand sanitizer, it does a great job. And same thing if you have Sharpie on like a table, just put a little dollop of hand sanitizer and it will clean it up. Just be careful, if it can strip acrylic paint, it can also strip varnish. So if you have a really nice table that is real wood and has a real lacquer or varnish on it, if you leave the hand sanitizer on there, it will actually eat away at that spot. So just be really careful. Alright, well, thank you for watching and have fun creating your color wheel. We will have a laminator, so when you're done outlining everything, and if you're really happy with the way your color wheel came out, we can laminate it and it will stay in your portfolio and you can use it for future tutorials with our